Good evening. Good evening. My name is Reverend Raveen Zahad, and I am one of the co-pastors of the Old Meeting House. And on behalf of our beloved community, we want to welcome each and every one of you here today. Before we enter into the program, I would like to ask you to join me in a moment of silence as we remember their dear friend, Pete Sutherland, who passed away recently. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And before I hand over the program to our Arts Committee, I just want to mention that Christmas can be a tough time for people. If you are struggling with depression or loss, or just going through the blues, please feel free to reach out to me or any one of the members of our community here who are listed on our church webpage or in one of the bulletins. And we will gladly walk you through the problems you're going through. It is a non-Christian based effort that we have to help people go through Christmas or any part of their life. You're important to us, and your journey is your journey. We're not trying to convert anyone here, but we do want to love you into being a better version of yourself if you need it. With that in mind, I would like to welcome Marcia Clark and Catherine Harris from the Old Meeting House Arts Committee.
Welcome to the Old Meeting House. We just have a couple of housekeeping. I'm so glad to see you here. It's so nice to be back after this long hiatus. Yay! If in the unlikely event of an emergency, you'll exit the way you came in. There's also an emergency exit, that window over there, that is actually a secret doorway, so you can go out that way as well. Bathrooms, there's a 15-minute intermission, and bathrooms in the parish house down below the meeting house. You go in the front door to the right, and that's where there'll be intermission snacks for purchase, or a donation of me. And to the right of that, there's a door. There's also another bathroom upstairs. Go up the stairs, and you'll see it up there in the hallway. Thank you.
And I'm just going to welcome you on behalf of the Arts Ministry. The purpose that we have is to really create community within our church, but to expand it beyond the church and using the arts to bring us together. So we're really happy to have you here tonight. And Patty Casey is here with her friends for their 11th time here.
So, welcome Patty Casey, Catherine Bloom, and Mark Nash. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. This is, my heart is full.
Evening rolls in early way up north here, and the hushed and snowy mountains take your frozen breath away. Oh, bitter cold, and so much has flown away. Winter knows kindness all its own. Stranger lit a candle in the window, so it shines out on the pathway where so many find their way. Some in finest leather, some will beg and many fear, but none will walk alone in the dark. 'Cause for all of us was kindled bright and morning star, whose light pours down on the dirty and the clean. And we all wait through the longest night, do not wait alone. For into this night will come a light of the bride and the morning So gather round you all your friends and family, and reach your hand across the void to someone who has none, and we'll light a little flame and we'll sing to the sky, and we will not wait alone in the dark, 'cause for all of us was kindled a bright and morning star, whose light pours down on the dirty and the clean. And we all wait through the longest night, we do not wait alone, for into this night will come a light of the bride and the morning star, whose light pours down on the dirty and the clean. And we all wait through the longest night, do not wait alone, for into this night will come the light of the bride and the morning star.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Two stories.
And songs.
Song for Winter's Eve.
Yes, it's okay. Perfect. I'm Catherine Bloom,
I'm Mark Nash.
here with the amazing Patty Casey.
Yeah. But sadly, not with our friend Pete Sutherland, who left this world just about 3 weeks ago. We'll miss so much about him. His wit, his musicality, his kindness, his deep commitment to his audience and to his students. But we heard he left with a smile on his face and deep curiosity about what comes next. No fear, only love and peace.
Pete was bathed in admiration from every corner of the Vermont community. He touched souls, he moved many, many feet to dance, and he sparked a musical flame in multiple generations of his students, and honestly, he was one of the best creative collaborators we all have ever had.
So we're dedicating tonight's show to Pete and his boundless talent, and from his collage calendars to his beautiful stories to his songs that stay with you forever, his endless capacity to create.
We also want to take a moment to acknowledge that after 2 years, we are back here with real live flesh and blood.
Really, there is nothing like live theater and feeling the warmth and the breath and the energy of an audience.
Even when you're masked. It is a real, meaningful, and necessary thing, both you and the masking, for all our lives.
And the tradition we've created here at the Old Meeting House is one which carries us through life's sorrows and joys.
And promises the returning of the light, even in these, the darkest days of the year.
Our tradition of sharing this evening with you has taught us something that we'll always carry with us in our bones. The truth that the best balm for winter chill is each other.
Amen.
In the spirit of tradition and recalling our many years with Pete, tonight is kind of a winter's eve greatest hits. It's made up of stories and songs that we love and which we hear through the grapevine that you all love too.
A perfect example of why, when our hearts are sad, we take comfort in the familiar.
So our first story, Dead Man's Hill, is actually one of Pete's, and it's one of our all-time favorites. It tells the tale of a small boy, a steep, snowy hill, and the prospect of conquering it with a gravity-driven winter transportation device, which is possessed of a beauty and grace the likes of which this child had only ever seen in his dreams.
Dead Man's Hill. No one knew who named it that. No one even seemed to wonder about it. Kind of tough to imagine now that there was such a place in our safe, well-ordered little town with such a name. What must our parents have thought? Not much, apparently. Mom, we're going sliding. Dead Man's Hill? Yeah, okay, have fun, works out. Tough kids, tough parents. Their kind may never walk or slide this earth again. The hill itself, one of the numberless bluffs above the twists and turns of the La Platte River, was in fact just a block and a half or so from our village's one traffic light, right past a few quiet houses where even fewer children lived, and then a 3-minute trudge across an open field. If we happened on a bitter night, on a bitter, bright afternoon, to meet up with sled-toting children from the Falls Village, half a mile south, it was all very hail fellow well met, as if they were exotic foreigners, the advanced party of the Peary expedition, and not your classmates, whose insufferable snickering you had to endure all year long in health class. You were out here all together, the few, the brave, willing to tow your little sleds of questionable stability to the precipice, the very lip of Dead Man's Hill's top-rated run, the equivalent of a double black diamond, to take that slow, calculating breath of lung-busting air. See your answering exhalation hang for a split second there in front of your nose before vanishing. Feel your stomach, your lungs, and then every part of you tensing in anticipation. Then to mount your sled and push off, to drift downward with unearthly speed. It wasn't that you couldn't control that little old flexible flyer of yours. Oh no! It was that you could just barely control it. Tugging firmly enough on the crosspiece rudder, artfully combined with tilting your bulky, bundled body, did in fact allow you to steer ever so modestly to the left or right. For those who favored taking the run sitting up, the steering was done by tugging on the sled's trusty rope, which was attached to the rudder in double knots it would take a chainsaw to untie. Those thrill seekers opting for the arguably more macho head-first, belly-down position grasped the crossbar itself with mittened fingers, ignoring the ice-coated rope altogether. Of course, in either case, you had learned to keep your booted feet perpetually hovering just inches above the speeding snow in case you discovered that the time for applying the brakes was right now. You might well have learned this maneuver after a particularly memorable run, or possibly it was from watching the Flintstones while dining on a medium-sized Tupperware container of Frosted Flakes. And then there was that special move, the execution of which will write you into local history as either a ninja or a nebbish, and of course we are talking about the bailout. Having originally been more of the dignified sitter-upper tribe, I had experienced only two real effective methods for simultaneously steering and concluding a run: falling off the sled to the left and falling off the sled to the right. True, the lower to the ground liar downers had to deal with stiff necks, snow in the face, and wedgies, but they did appear to stay on their sleds in far greater numbers. So down on my belly I went. I clearly recall the moment one long gone late December afternoon when John LaPierre and a majority of his many younger siblings hove into view. John was positively swaggering in his snow boots and proudly trailing a toboggan that Père Noël, or one of his trusted associates, had wisely propped up in their breezeway rather than dragged into a living room already packed to the rafters with gifts. The thing must have been 7 feet long if it was an inch. In my memory, it gave off an unmistakable new toboggan smell. We crowded around. considering what was clearly going to prove a Dead Man's Hill game changer. The toboggan had a long, handsome, and generously padded seat of green vinyl, on which we could already imagine ourselves riding like a pack of pashas, and beneath which the varnished slats of fine-grained ash gleamed in the sunlight. With much fanfare, La Famille Lapierre parked their toboggan a respectful distance from the top of the slope. Most of the family were by now vibrating in their snowsuits with excitement, and Lori and Linda, John's youngest sisters, immediately rushed to place themselves in the frontmost positions. This glaring violation of family protocol was met with a hoarse bark en française, causing the younger to scamper clumsily backwards like puppies. In moments, the whole clan was seated in amended birth order. John and his brothers in front, followed by their sisters. Their combined weight, which had seen a recent increase due to a holiday diet heavy on the carbs and sugar, along with especially generous slices of prize-winning tourtière from not one, but 2 visiting mammaires, caused the toboggan to sink into the fresh powder like an underinflated air mattress. This brought a round of derisive and ill-advised hooting from the spectators, glaring at us like a caged predator with an exit strategy. John raised his blue vinyl bottom and, grasping the gracefully curved bow with hand-knit, mittened hands, began tugging on the oversized sled, inching it forward while hollering to his family to dig their booted heels in and poussez! With this effort, the toboggan began to move slowly and jerkily forward. Our laughter turned immediately to cheering. The mighty sled had now reached the lip of the run and teetered forward as if posing for a winter sports magazine. With one more semi-coordinated kick from the crew, it was gone. We hustled a giant step forward and watched as the toboggan, with its great load of Lapierres, accelerated with breathtaking speed, rose and fell majestically with each mogul it encountered, and shrank toward the fence line below and the river beyond. Heartfelt screams in several octaves rolled up the hill, some from those who managed to remain aboard, and some from their siblings who did not, rolling away like little booster rockets that had served their purpose by putting the capsule into orbit and were no longer needed. By the time the mission was aborted and the toboggan ground to a halt, owing either to heroic driving skills or the physics of an ever-lightening load, the lower half of Dead Man's Hill was strewn with half-buried Lapierres, whimpering and laughing. Of course, we cheered generously for the grandeur of it all. But as John and 1 or 2 of his brothers bent their backs to the task of hauling this greatest of all beasts back up the hill, we let out a collective sigh as we climbed aboard our own modest sleds and hurled ourselves over the edge to our individual fates. At the bottom, we would sit precisely where and at whatever angle we landed, or if lying down, stare up at the blue sky, savoring the stillness, the deep, silent heart of the afternoon. But all the while, from above or below, we would be keeping a weather eye on the Lapierres, round-eyed and ruddy-cheeked and unquestionably ready for more. But surely there would come a point when Lori or Linda or their smallest brother Stephen would be moaning with a growling stomach or a bursting bladder, or became too bruised or tired or soaked to carry on, and that would signal our chance. Approximately 2 hours and many runs later, this moment at last seemed to have arrived. The younger Lapierres now lay like baggage amongst the snowy ridges surrounding the launch pad, noses running and exhibiting little interest in any more downhill sports. John, his brother David, and their sister Louise, though stiff and trembling a bit from the exertion and the cold, as we all were, began arranging themselves on the padded seat for one last run. The vacancy brought on by their shrinking numbers yawned at us, we could not imagine not being invited now. There was a mildly awkward pause. "Well," said John, as if he had invited us, and gestured to the rear. Besides the LaPierres, there were 5 of us remaining on the hill. Despite the fact that A, 5 is clearly more than 3, and B, all 5 of us were a good bit larger than the departed 3, we climbed aboard. And the 3 older LaPierres scrunched forward to make as much room as they could, which was still not really enough. A seated ballet ensued, wherein legs, arms, and torsos of every color tried out a number of potential angles, including entwining with their immediate neighbors. This was all done in a surprisingly matter-of-fact and business-like way. Any embarrassment that might have arisen from this unexpected intimacy buried under several layers of wool and nylon. By now, we had all either seen or accomplished the takeoff. With a mighty grunt, it was done, and we were over the edge. And in seconds, we were traveling faster than any of us could remember our one-man sleds ever having gone. Packed cheek by jowl as we were, we could feel the tension and the joy in each other's bodies as we rocketed downward, stung by wave after wave of powder. There was no shouting or laughter, not a word. As if a pact had been made, as if we all knew that riding in silence might draw us together, might drive the memory of these 10 or 15 thrilling seconds deep inside each of us, to remain there, safe through the long years of our lives until middle-aged yearning drew it out again. So, are you imagining a dramatic crash? An ill-advised group lean to one side that caused a rollover, at which point laughter could no longer be contained? Or how about this one? That somehow not one of us fell off, and thus our overloaded ship gained so much momentum that we overshot the usual snowdrifts at the foot of the run, slid inexorably another 10 yards into and somehow through the few pitiful shards of barbed wire fencing there, passing between 2 towering maples, and found ourselves staring down a short, steep bank at the La Platte River, its swift water rushing by. And then maybe, just maybe, we were saved by this. That again, without a word, and at the last possible moment, we all remembered to apply the brakes. Is that what happened? My memory says, yes, no question. Just as there was no need to ask each other whether and to who we would reveal this dramatic episode of the afternoon's fun, this little flash of mortality on Dead Man's Hill. Silence by now was one of us. In silence we agreed. No telling this story. But I am telling you now, because for all of the changes, all of the development in our little town, Dead Man's Hill is somehow still there. At least I'm pretty sure it is. I haven't checked it lately. You'd have to drag your sled across 2 newer roads with 2 long traffic lights, and then the parking lot of the True Value Hardware and the Kinney Drug, and cut around behind the dumpsters at the Hannafords, overripe and steaming in the frigid February air. Your sled would be a tough, high-tech plastic, aerodynamically designed to within an inch of its life and overpriced. On your already sweaty head would be a helmet of sufficient strength to allow you to survive a fiery crash at Daytona. Deep in a zippered inner pocket, you'd have some energy bars and, of course, a cell phone. But a few more strides and you would feel yourself slipping back 2 generations in time. You would hear shouts of pure joy careening through the frigid air, wild echoes that will grow fainter but never quite die out. You'd find yourself looking steeply down at the undulating folds under 6 inches of fresh powder, the dark gnarled trees, the fence, the bend in the partly frozen river, curling like a beckoning finger.
that was a story that Pete wrote, and Susanna, my friend Susanna Blatchley is joining us. Thank you. We're going to do a song that Pete wrote called Ribbon Candy. Don't want no ribbon candy now, no gravy cooling slowly. Just wanna watch the neighbors plow, scene I hold most holy. I saw your angel in the snow, I swear I heard it humming. Little tune we used to know about happy days a coming. Took my childhood for a ride in Santa Claus pajamas. Saw its shadow smiling wide in the kitchens of my grandma's. Upon this solstice valentine, I pour my precious fuel in hopes that Perseus and Orion might feel inclined to duel. How well the northern lights still dance to someone's bonfire fiddle. This world will always take a chance, love us back a little. Beginning of every snowy hill, to spring will be conceding. The last tomato on the sill, it blesses every seed. Don't want no ribbon candy now, no gravy cooling slowly. Just wanna watch the neighbors plow, scene I hold most holy.
The next story, Up the Hill, is one that Patty wrote. And from the first time I heard it, I've always thought that it was the quintessential Stories for a Winter's Eve story. It's beautiful, it's romantic, it's bittersweet, and oh so very Vermonty. Plus, you know, it's got cows.
I don't suppose many folks get married on Christmas Day anymore. Most people want to feel special, like the day is all theirs, not share it with anybody, especially not someone as famous as Jesus. But Jerry didn't want to wait until spring. He wanted to get started right away. He was a fair bit older than me. I think he was afraid I'd fall for one of the O'Connell boys if he didn't act fast. And he said the sweetest thing. He said marrying me was the best present he could ever get. I don't guess he was the first guy to use that line, but I believed him. I was pretty as a young girl. I knew that, and that kind of pretty can distract you from yourself. The boys came around like bees to a crushed peach on a hot lawn. But I didn't marry the first one that asked me. Even distracted, I knew enough not to swing at the first pitch. Jerry came second, and boy, I'm glad he did. He was the kindest man I ever met. I just loved the way he smelled, like the fall woods on a snappy day rubbed around a piece of old leather. I loved the way his hands moved over a new calf, and how his softly worn flannel shirts lay against his neck, and how he came in at supper time, always with some little story from his day. And how he loved me. Oh, Lord. We ended up farther out than Pluto. Our farm snugged all by itself in a humpy little hollow about 6 miles from town. I always knew we'd farm. Milkers. Not a lot. We didn't have enough open, even land to graze too many. After a while, Jerry came up with the good idea of walking the cows a couple miles down through the woods to Yvonne Lavignere's every few days, where they'd eat like greedy pigs from Yvonne's good green grass. Yvonne didn't care. He was all set by then, only had a few head left, and he loved Jerry's company anyway. Sometimes, every few weeks, we'd all of us walk down, me, Jerry, and the cows. We'd leave the herd at Yvonne's, walk on into town to shop, pick them up when we were done, and drive them, full and slow, on home, up the hill, laughing in the dark, while their huge bodies rustled wet grasses, and they blew steamy wafts right into the night. They trusted Jerry to get them home safe. I did too. I always knew he would. We got old, me and Jerry, him quicker than me. I suppose we were lucky, not like some folks who lose each other young and have to start over with somebody new. Like finding your way around a brand new 2-story house in the dark with a blindfold on, that must be. It's funny though, I still love the way he moved, even when he got hunched over and bandy-legged. He had more hair growing out of his ears than a wild boar, and his eyebrows looked like little animals. But he still loved me like I was some kind of precious queen. Even after he had the shock, before he died, when only half his face worked, he'd grin at me lopsided and remind me to get the cows down the hill when I could, and get them back up too. Just get up the hill and you'll be home. If I had a nickel for every time I heard him say that. As smart as Jerry was, it was me who thought of using the girls to get through the snow and down the hill into town. Well, okay, we got caught one time in a squall coming back up the hill, but I was smart enough to realize those girls could plow along near as good as any draft horse. And they made a nice wide path for me to walk in. So I ran them down the hill after the next storm, and they knew. They knew they'd get the warm barn and Yvonne's good hay, and they trotted down the hill through the snow like a dog on his way home from the neighbors. Going back up the hill wasn't quite so easy, but cows are generally agreeable, not stupid like some people say. So we worked it out. And the new little ones would come along when they were big enough, the whole bunch of them, making me a pretty easy go of it all in all. I'd leave them at Yvonne's like before and walk on into town for the shopping, stop and pick up the happy cows and get on up the hill. It was lonesome after Jerry died. It was really just me and the cows. And now and then a gab with Yvonne, or his wife, before she died. Terrible lonesome. I imagined Jerry everywhere. I kept his barn coat by the door because it still smelled like him, even years after he'd passed. I never had managed to have friends, living so far up the mountain, and Jerry being my best friend anyway. But after I started driving the cows down the hill, people started talking about me like I was a crazy old lady. That hurt. I always acted like it didn't. But it did. Now, you're probably thinking, this is a pretty ordinary story up to now. Except maybe the part about driving the cows down the hill, which was just genius, if you ask me. But a few years ago, really is, now that I think about it. Something happened that changed everything. It was about this time of year. I know because the trees in town were all decorated when I drove the girls down the hill and walked on in for supplies. Oh my, how they did up the town that year. Sparkly tinsel and lights in the shop windows and people bustling everywhere with bags. It was so pretty. But I just felt old and tired. And I remember it took me longer than usual to walk back to Yvonne's. I figured I must have wore myself out the day before. Or else just sad again. Still missing Jerry after all these years. So I got us up the hill, got the girls in the barn, put the lantern out, and went inside. I was in the bathroom when I heard it, just finishing up my business, and there it was, the sound of someone sitting in Jerry's chair by the wood stove in the front room. I almost jumped right out of my skin. I knew that sound so well, but with Jerry gone, well, it could only be someone up to no good. Me in the bathroom, the robber in the front room, and the shotgun in the hallway by the door, all in a line, but not a line that worked in my favor. I looked around pretty wild. Thought about the plunger, but pictured it bouncing off the robber's head. I sure didn't want to grab the other end without my rubber gloves on. And settled on my hairbrush, thinking I could at least stick those sharp bristles into his eyes. I edged over the bathroom door, stuck my head around fast, just wanted to get it over with. And there he was, just like always before. His flannel shirt frayed at the cuffs, sitting forward in his rocker, his eyes bright with love for me. Except that I was so scared I couldn't really appreciate it. I must have looked pretty funny because Jerry smiled his old smile at me and waited for me to come around. Jerry. Jerry? I clutched at my chest and stumbled forward onto the sofa. I must be dreaming or sick. I trailed off. You're not. It's okay. It's really me. So tender. Always so gentle. The way he spoke to me. I'm here. I can't hold you, but I'm here. I didn't mean to scare you. I thought it would be better to come in here than out in the barn. I didn't want to run you off, so I waited until I had you, when you were in the bathroom. In my mind, I heard the mean things the kids say about the crazy old lady from up on the mountains with cows for sled dogs, and I wondered if maybe they had something there. Was I around the bend? I didn't feel like I'd slipped any cogs. A little tired, maybe. My legs hurt now and then, but nothing like this. And then there was Jerry, just the same, talking to me, rocking back to soak up the warmth from the stove. I was shaky. I poured myself a toddy, if ever there was a day, and sat back down on the couch. At least he wasn't a robber. I eyed the hairbrush and actually smiled a little thinking of what I was planning to use it for. That's my girl. I knew you'd come around. I'm still me, He leaned over, held his old hands to the front of the stove. And you're still you. I can see that. I've missed you terribly. It wasn't too long before a second toddy and the relief of Jerry's company, however ghostly, relaxed me out of my terror at finding myself chatting with my long-dead husband. Who knew? Maybe the mean kids were right, but right then, didn't matter. I had Jerry back. I told him about walking the cows down the hill through the snow, and he thought that was just about the best idea ever. I told him Yvonne's wife had died, and he just frowned and nodded. I told him all about the farm, and how it needed so much work, and I wasn't feeling as well as I used to, and he said he knew it needed work even before he had to leave, and how awful he felt leaving me there alone to run the farm. We talked just like we always did. I must have fallen asleep after the toddies. The room was so warm. I woke up on the sofa just before dawn, thirsty and confused. An old quilt from the attic tucked around me, and the stove banked and damped down, glowing steadily, a fresh pile of wood in the box. Well, Jerry came every night after that. Must have been 2 weeks or so. I hated that I couldn't touch him, but that was the only bad thing about it. I'd work like always during the day, though I could see how much I was slowing down. And at night, he'd just show up in the front room when I had my back turned, or when I was in the kitchen, or like the first time once or twice he caught me when I was in the bathroom. I even started to pat my hair down and pinch my cheeks until they were rosy, like some schoolgirl waiting for her beau. You know, he said one evening, a couple weeks into his visits, we have an anniversary coming up. His rocking chair squeaked faintly on the floor. The stove ticked. Do you remember? 60 years. I watched my hands in my lap. Day after tomorrow. I know, he said. Old people who have gotten there together can endure long silences. Finally, he said, I have an idea, if you'd like. Something special, something for both of us. His voice sounded different to me then, and I felt a funny little tingle, like when you bang your elbow in just the right place and it hurts like heck, but it almost makes you smile. Or when the doctor whacks you in the knee with his little rubber hammer and you kick out, you couldn't stop it if you tried. I know you're getting tired. If you think you got one more trip in you, why don't you bring the girls down to Yvonne's tomorrow and leave them in the barn, day before Christmas. Yvonne won't mind. Then come home. Just get on up the hill and you'll be home. That made me smile. I patted my hair a little then, looked around at the pictures on the walls in our front room. I played with my thin wedding band. Didn't say anything for a really long time. It snowed that night, a whole lot and then some. I hadn't seen snow like that in years. The girls had to work hard to break trail. I felt bad for them. But then there was Yvonne's paddock finally and the hay, and they fell to eating it like I never fed them, butting their great noses against each other. Yvonne wasn't around. I guess he'd gone to his daughter's for the Christmas holiday over in Burlington. Well, let me tell you, going down was a lot easier than going back up. It was already noon or so and still snowing. I felt like I was hauling a cow behind me. I was that tired. I got to a little clearing where Jerry and I would always stop and try to catch my breath. My legs were killing me. My heart felt like the steam engine I heard pounding at the World's Fair that time Jerry and I went. It seemed impossible, and I wanted to cry. But I remembered Jerry's last, just get up the hill and you'll be home. Dark. Quiet, without the cows there. The first time ever without them or anyone. I got inside and I landed on the sofa. Things were breaking down inside me. I could feel it. Like those pictures you see of old buildings being blown up, except they don't blow out. They just kind of fold and buckle. I marveled at Jerry's timing. He always was so smart. It was a howler outside my window that Christmas Eve, snowing sideways and colder than brass balls in February. I took my coat off, my mittens, my hat, all stiff with blown snow, threw them on the couch. Patted my hair one more time and slipped out the front door. It was just like Jerry said. I wasn't cold. My legs didn't hurt, and for the first time in years, I could breathe all the way in and out. I felt like I was 19 again. My feet skimmed over the snow as I ran up the hill, toward a little light bobbing in the woods. I couldn't get there quick enough. Jerry, in his flannel, young again, so handsome, set down the lantern, and finally took me in his arms, ready to go home. I know the way. It's just up the hill a little bit. I took Jerry's warm hand in mine, the one with the little gold wedding band on it, and we walked up the hill and away into the woods. It was the best Christmas present ever.
There's a light in the window, darling one, darling one. There's a light in the window, darling one. It will shine on forever through darkness and bad weather to light your way home, darling one. There's a cool breeze a-blowing through my heart, through my heart. There's a cool breeze blowing through my heart. Golden leaves are falling gently through the yard, like the last time I held you in my arms. No one ever knows what lies down the road. My love travels with you, no matter where you go. There's a light in the window will always shine on to light your way home, darling. I can't teach you to fly, darling one, darling one. I can't teach you to fly, darling one. But if you cut away the strings, realize that you have wings, you can fly back to me, darling one. No one ever knows what lies down the road, but my love travels with you, no matter where you go. There's a light in the window, will always shine on to light your way home, darling. To light your way home, darling.
And just like that, we're at intermission. So we're going to take a short break. Really short. We really want to try and make this about 15 minutes. No, we want to make it exactly 15 minutes.
Welcome back. Glad you made it. And so, while I feel like in the world of Vermont, I am primarily known as an actor and a writer. The last few years, I have fallen in love with songwriting. It has become one of the great passions of my life. And frequently, I will read a thing, or a thing will happen, and I'll have this moment of, oh, I feel a song coming on, and out it comes. And in late October, right after Pete went into hospice, in this beautiful little guest house in Montpelier, Mark and I came down to see him. And Patty warned us that he was physically shrunken, but mentally and spiritually still all there. And it was a beautiful fall day. He had a young violin student who'd come in from out of town to play for him. And I think Pete's hospice was basically a hootenanny. And Mark and I had a marvelous time talking with him, and we asked him all kinds of questions about, what does it feel like to be dying, and what are you thinking about, and what are you curious about? And he was amazing and forthcoming. And we walked out of there, and the song started coming on before we even got in the car. And by the time I got home, this was written. And so this is my tribute to Pete, and I wish I had Pete's posse and pretty much all of the students up here with me. But it is, as you might imagine, too, a sing-along. So if the chorus moves you, feel free. Do not refrain. There's an ache deep in my bones that's moved in to stay. Legs are stone dead, weight, feet turn into clay. Shoulders bent round and like I'm hauling a plow. I'd say a week or two is all I got left now. Till the sun's shining bright through the gold leaves as they go swirling down, down, down. And my heart shining bright on my old sleeves as my life goes spinning round, round, round. There's always one more tale to tell, one more tune to play, one more tale to tell, one more tune to play, one more tale to tell, one more tune to play, from now to the very last day. A whole shell brought by a friend who came to say goodbye. From the shores of Pura Vida to this bed in which I'll die, she said, check out the beauty left long after life is gone. Like everything you taught us every time we sing along. She said, your soul shining bright through my cold tears as they go flowing down, down, down. And your joy shining bright as the end nears you. Wear it like a crown, crown, crown. There's always one more tale to tell, one more to play, one more tale to tell, one more to play, one more tale to tell, one more tune to play, from now to the very last day. Got nothing left to prove, but still wish that I could play. No mountains left to move, but got so much left to say. Had so many chances, danced so many dances. Now farewells feel like romances. I know I'll be okay. There's always one more tale to tell, one more tune to play, one more tale to tell, one more tune to play, one more tale to tell, one more tune to play, from now to the very last day. From now to the very last day.
That's Catherine Bloom. So I'm gonna have Susanna come back up. Very grateful. Got friends here tonight. Yeah. It's like the stand is a whole new experience here. So I also wrote a little song for Pete, and Catherine pretty much said it, but we all were spending a lot of time with him. I was just down the road from where he was staying, so I got to spend quite a bit of time there. And as Catherine said, he was so completely open and honest about what he was experiencing. And I'm very curious, so I asked a lot of questions. And so the song is called Everywhere, and it's largely taken from our last few conversations. I know where I left you. It was just yesterday. Someone called and said you'd gone. Are you running through the leaves? Are you standing very still? Ooh, did you make it to the clouds? Ooh, will you rain down on all of us like the music of your soul? Like the stars turn to dust. Oh, I believe you're everywhere, 'cause that's where you said you'd be. Now that you're everywhere, you're always here with me. So where are you now? Have you found a place to rest? Ooh, with a fire crackling close and a cat curled on your chest. Ooh, are you singing with the angels? Are you flying through the air? Are you floating down the river? Or are you everywhere? Oh, I believe you're everywhere, 'cause that's where you said you'd be. Now that you're everywhere, you're always here with me. Now that you're everywhere, you're always here with me.
Sorry about that.
How do you want it? Okay, so, since this holiday show came about back in 2004, we've probably read upwards of about 75 stories. Not Kathy and I personally, but the whole group of actors, because we do this in Burlington also. And while they've all been unique and marvelous in their own ways, around 2009, Kathy here hit on an idea that has resonated with our fellow Vermonters like no other. It's a two-part story of a couple of mysterious transplants, a skeptical community, and a kind of holiday magic that can only happen in our very own backyard. Here is Kathy with the first part of Coming to Town.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite.
No pressure.
Yeah.
It started with a 4 a.m. phone call. The kind that usually busts you out of bed in a cold sweat because you're sure someone close to you has died. The thing was, though, I wasn't in bed. I've started running my own business from home, a side effect of the economic downturn. And if I was ever concerned that I'm much too relaxed and get far too much sleep, this whole freelance lifestyle has completely disabused me of that notion. I answered, trying to keep the fret out of my voice. Hanlon Realty of Vermont, Ginny speaking. Good morning, my dear, said a very sweet, matronly sounding woman. I hope I didn't wake you. I assured her she hadn't. Oh, lovely. Nicky told me I wouldn't, but he always forgets about the time zones. And plus, with daylight savings, you fall back, right? Or is it fall forward? Fall down? What is time really after all? She had a dotty, grandmotherly warmth about her. And where was she from? The accent was hard to place. It sounded slightly Germanic, or maybe Danish. I couldn't quite tell. She went on to explain that her name was Ida Clausen, and that she and her husband Nikki were relocating their home-based manufacturing business and had decided to move to Vermont. They were going to come look at places the following week. We'd love to get an old farm with a working barn. We got draft animals, and hopefully several other outbuildings, or at least room to build more. Certainly, we need dormitory space for our workers. I asked, are they seasonal workers or full-time? Oh, yes, they are. I figured I wouldn't press the point for now, though I did wonder if they'd have trouble rezoning agricultural land for light industrial use, but we could cross that bridge later. I told her I'd start researching properties and schedule a tour for them when they arrived. By the way, I said, how did you decide on Vermont? Oh, she replied in a gentle, airy tone. We had you all very, very nice. The following Friday, I picked Ida and Nikki up at the airport. I have to say, they were both just adorable. They looked like they could be anywhere between 60 and 300. With full heads of snowy white hair. Ida wore hers in a big up-top cinnamon bun. Nikki had longish hair for an old guy, a full Santa beard, and rosy cheeks you just wanted to squeeze. Neither of them could have been over 5'5", and they gave off the air of a couple of well-used old garden gnomes. How was the flight? I asked over the stream of luggage circling the carousel at baggage claim. Quaint, scoffed Nikki as he scanned the Samsonite parade. Oh, now, tutted Ida. He just wished he could open the windows on the plane. What a dear. I laughed. Open the windows? At 30,000 feet? Nikki shrugged an old leather rucksack onto his shoulder. I like the fresh air. I took Ida and Nikki to their first prospect, a classic farm-turned-country inn near Calais. Nikki started scoping out the house, while Ida chatted up the innkeepers, who said that running a B&B was enjoyable but demanding, and now they wanted to travel for a while. Oh, you should talk to Nikki, she said. He's been everywhere. We found Nikki, a smoking pipe clenched between his teeth, gazing meditatively at the living room fireplace. The soul of a house, he said quietly. Then he shook his head. Not this place. The second farm was dismissed quickly by Nikki as being too close to town. The third was in a little hollow he deemed too claustrophobic. The fourth choice had a too small barn, and the fifth a too tall silo. But dear, Ida countered, it's got great storage. And, she added quietly, we don't have a lot of time. Nikki just snorted and walked away. This went on for 3 solid days. I kept trying to alter my strategies, revising the selection of places based on what I thought they wanted. Ida was clearly feeling pressed to find something soon, and she was willing to consider the potential in an imperfect property. But Nikki was intractable, and I got totally nervous and jumpy, as well as increasingly annoyed, trying to please him. Every farm we visited had some deficiency, which, though workable in my eyes, sunk the deal completely for him. Now, I'm okay with clients being clear and picky about what they want, but cranky and grumpy just yanks my chain. We had dinner the last night in the back booth of a little place called Mamie's Diner near Island Pond. I was exhausted, completely strung out with trying to please Nikki and crack the code of what he seemed to want in a home. They weren't in such great shape either. Nikki hadn't ordered any food, just coffee, and was staring into the depths of his mug, looking about 1,000,000 miles away. Ida was picking at her pot pie and shooting little glances over to Nikki, trying to suss out the scope of his emotional storm with her wifely weather radar. I really wanted to salvage the situation, both for my professional pride as well as my fashionably thin bank account. So I pulled on my big girl undies and tried again. I took the indirect, cheerful approach first. You know, we have been so busy, I haven't even had a chance to ask you folks much more about your business. What do you make? Ida looked at Nikki, who was still lost in the black hole of his coffee. Then she gave a half smile and said, children's items, playthings, and such. Okay, that was a start. I pressed on. And where do you sell them? This got Nikki's attention. Sell? He spat the word like a shtetl rabbi who's been offered a ham and cheese sandwich. Sell? Young ladies, this is not a commercial enterprise. Ida caught his arm. No, dear hush, she didn't mean it. Nikki hunkered down into a dark simmer and started mumbling to himself. I thought I heard something like, 1700 years. But that didn't make any sense. Ida squeezed his arm a little harder and said, Rau heute, sei ruhig. Now, I took a little German in high school, so I know the last thing she'd said, sei ruhig, meant be quiet. But the first thing sounded completely strange. I had to ask, Ida, what did you say before be quiet? Oh, Rau heute, that's Finnish for calm down. I see. I took a deep breath and decided to move from cheerful to direct. Nikki, Ida, I don't want to pry, but I can tell this move is really hard for you. And I'm guessing you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't have to. Now, I can't help ease the pain of leaving a place you love. That is a very personal thing. But I promise you, I can make the transition easier if you let me know what's going on. Nikki harumphed. It was a classic pompous old fart harumph. That's very sweet of you, miss, but I know everything and you can't do anything kind of harumph that turned my blood to lava. Ida gave him another now, dear pat on the arm, and that sent me over the edge completely. Okay, look, clearly you don't want to make this move, but Nikki, you don't have to be a big baby about it. And Ida, I know it's probably a generational thing, but I have to say that you are totally indulging his bratty behavior. You're the one who's doing all the work here. Look, if you folks really need to find a new place, and he's just gonna mope and sulk, then Ida, let's just leave him at your hotel and go look at properties ourselves. You'll pick what you like and what you know is best. He can piss and moan about it all he wants to, but at least the job will be done, you won't have to keep stressing, and I won't have to keep wasting my time. The temperature in the room dropped to about 2 degrees below iceberg. Nikki looked me in the eye. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but I mean he looked me in the eye. Some people make eye contact, but they sort of skim over the surface of you. Nikki's gaze penetrated like he was a Saudi oil rig drilling for the sweet, light crude of my soul. Finally, he turned to Ida and said, Semuheni. Then he winked at me and said, Icelandic. Ida released his arm and turned to me. Jeannie, we have a well-known philanthropy which focuses on the production and international distribution of children's toys and other holiday gift items. How great, I said. What's it called? Well, dear, it's not really called anything exactly, so we sort of casually refer to it as Nikki's workshop. And I can't believe I haven't asked you this yet, but where are you based? We are a bit north of here. North of Vermont? So, where, Montreal? No, a little farther. Quebec City? No, not Canada. Not Canada? Well, how far north could it be? Well, as north as there is. What? I laughed. The North Pole? Instead of chuckling along with me, Ida and Nikki nodded in utter seriousness. I looked at them, in particular at Nikki's giant belly and fluffy white beard. I thought about his big rucksack and the gravity in his eyes. A North Pole toy company? And then it clicked and I burst out laughing. Oh, come on, you guys. You know, that's good though, the North Pole. I mean, you do look a lot like, you're like a couple of models for a Norman Rockwell Christmas card. I'm sure you get that all the time. People think that I look like Parker Posey. She's in Best in Show, waiting for Guffman? Never mind. So, where are you really from? Nikki and Ida just sat there, quietly looking at me. Okay, now you're just trying to freak me out. Still, they sat. So what is this? Some kind of role-playing game for rich retirees with nothing better to do? Let's fly all over the place and pick unsuspecting real estate agents and pretend that we are serious, Ginny. Oh, bullshit, Ida. If you're bored with your life, go join the Peace Corps, take up golf, or Ginny, Nikki interrupted. Take out your phone and call your father. Why? Ask him what he got for Christmas the year he turned 8. No, Ginny, no, I stood up. This is idiotic, juvenile, and I matched Nikki in his soul-piercing gaze. Not very nice. I turned to stomp away, but Ida called out, Ginny, we are not playing the games with you. And something there, the charm of her messed up idiom mixed with the sound of sadness in her voice, something stopped me. I turned back. She had tears in her eyes. At that moment, my phone rang. Go ahead, Nikki said quietly. Answer it. Nikki's tone was so gentle, and Ida seemed so stricken, there wasn't really anything else I could do. Hanlon Realty, this is Jen. A familiar voice broke in. Ginger Bear! Oh, Dad! Hi, what's up? Nothing much. Your mother's at her yoga class, thought I'd just call and say hi. Nikki gave me a knowing look, gestured in a get on with it sort of way, then grabbed a napkin and started writing something on it. Dad, I'm in the middle of a meeting, so I can't talk long, but since you called, I do have a quick question. Okay, shoot. Do you, by any chance, remember what you got for Christmas when you were 8? Nikki turned the napkin face down and slid it over the table towards me. I'll never forget. Your Aunt Annie was born a couple of months before Christmas, and I was feeling very neglected and forgotten by my parents. But then, I got a special edition deluxe erector set, and that changed everything. I'd say it even started me on my career as an engineer. I reached for the napkin and turned it over. It said, Special Edition Deluxe Erector Set. Dad said, why do you ask? No reason, really, just, thinking about stuff. One other thing. Do you happen to know a guy named Nicky Clausen? No, never heard of him, why? Never mind. Ginny, you okay? Yeah, Dad, I'm fine, but I gotta go. I call you later. Love you. I put down my phone and said to Nikki, what did I get for Christmas when I was 8? Without missing a beat, Nikki said, a flexible flyer sled, a pair of bright blue snow boots, a sorry board game, which replaced the one your brother threw out the window, a complete set of Laura Ingalls Wilder books, and a Madame Alexander doll from the International Collection. Which country? Turkey. You see me when I'm sleeping? You still snuggle with your old Paddington bear. You know when I'm awake? You've earned a sleep that Ida called. Have I been bad or good? Ida stood up. Oh, for goodness sake! She threw down her napkin. Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. There was a long pause. I couldn't think. I couldn't move. I couldn't figure out how to react or what to do next. And then, without realizing it, I found myself saying, oh my God, I just bitch-slapped Santa. At that, Nikki burst out laughing. And honest to goodness, completely infectious, old-time ho-ho-ho. Ida and I cracked up too, just streaming tears there in the corner of Amy's. Once we had subsided into a light case of the giggles, I sat back down and asked why they were moving to Vermont. Ida said, oh, Jeannie, we love the North Pole like you couldn't imagine. But unfortunately, things up there are destabilizing. With the elves, you mean like politically? No, said Nikki. It's melting. Oh, you mean the ice? Yeah, he said softly. There's no landmass beneath the ice, just ocean. So once the ice goes, you're swimming with the polar bears. Nikki nodded. Wow. Got it, I said, and then my professional wheels started turning. Okay, so let me see if I can put this together. The kind of property you're looking for needs to be remote and private. It needs to have a nice home for you that feels as though you've been living there for a couple hundred lifetimes. Enough room to make and store a very large quantity of toys, comfortably house a generous workforce of small but dedicated laborers, and stable at least, I counted quickly in my head, 8 or 9 gravitationally enhanced ruminants plus a sleigh. Nikki laid a finger on the side of his nose and said, bingo. After our breakthrough at the Clausens, at Mamie's, the Clausens and I got along like gangbusters. They extended their trip a couple of days, and in no time we found the perfect place. A sweet mountaintop farm overlooking a remote valley that by Vermont standards was so heartwarmingly pastoral it was almost obscene. As you might expect, Ida and Nikki made the owners, Dale and Mary Bedard, an offer well above their asking price and closed the deal immediately. I hadn't thought the Bedards suspected anything unusual about the nature of their buyers, but I overheard Mary mentioning to Ida that she'd leave a few boxes of their kids' old winter clothes in the attic. You know, she said, for your friends. And as Dale gave Nikki a tour of his now empty dairy barn, he said, sorry I won't have no more raw milk for you. Maple pecan shortbread still okay though? Nikki beamed and said, Dale, there's nothing better. Watching them, it struck me how alike the Clausens and the Bedards were. Both couples were leaving a beloved home for reasons beyond their control. Both couples were taking the changes with as much grace as they could muster and finding ways to adapt and care for others along the way. Both couples represented a living embodiment of unflappable courage and unstinting generosity. Like some kind of gift-giving Eastern sage. Like a wise man. Like a Buddha. Like a Vermonter.
It only gets better. Tom McKenzie. Tom and I play together, I don't know, quite a bit. And, I pressed him into service this evening. This is a Carl Jones song.
Snowflake, fall on down. Bring all your buddies, come and paint this town. This old world has gone awry. We need you, snowflake, down here tonight. Bring back our childhood memories, when our hearts were light and spirits free. None of us make this town. This whole world has gone awry. We need you, snowflake, down here tonight. Snowflake, fall on down. Bring all your buddies, come and make this town. This whole world has gone astray. We need you, snowflake, down here today. Snowflake, fall on down.
Whoever coined the Vermont state motto, freedom and unity, must have been thinking of some other Vermont. Freedom, sure, we all want to be free. But unity? You put 3 Vermonters in a room and you're bound to be blessed with about 15 different opinions. I think we think we're making up for having such a small population. Let me back up a moment. I saw a cartoon once in which a pollster asks a woman, would you rather work retail or get a sharp stick in the eye? The woman thinks for a moment and then says, how big a stick? I do not work retail. I've never worked retail. But I can relate to this woman from the depths of my shriveled and still shriveling soul. Why? Because I, my friends, I am a town planner. It's not the rules or the regs which get me. It's not the detailed applications and the ad nauseum answering of the same dang questions. That I can handle. No, it's, and I really don't want to speak this out loud, it's the neighbors. Which neighbors? Any of them. All of them. Anyone who lives next door to or in the general proximity of any project of which I am aware or for which I am even potentially responsible. Anyone who cares deeply about the precise placement of someone else's decorative shrub. So, the eye-gouging Greek drama du jour, well, I got a call a few weeks ago from Dale Bedard, letting me know that he and his Mary finally sold the place. He said the folks are coming in, have a little family business, and they'll probably want to make some changes to the property. He made a point of saying that they're good people, and he asked that I do what I can to smooth the way for them. Dale was 3rd or 4th generation on that farm, and I knew that selling it was tearing his heart out. So if he was speaking up for the new owners, then they had to be something special. As a result, I didn't think too much of it when the aforementioned new owner, Nikki Clausen, applied for a permit to renovate and expand an outbuilding on the property, which he wanted to turn into the main workshop for his business. The only hitch was that our town regs required a septic capacity that the outbuilding site didn't have. And the best place for relocating the workshop was right in the middle of prime ag, that's short for agriculture, land. This kick-started a whole Act 250 permitting process, as well as an archaeological survey and a request for rezoning. Ultimately, Nikki was going to have to run the whole thing past our Development Review Board, a Machiavellian body if ever there was one. Still, this shouldn't have been a problem per se. I was pretty sure I could hook him up with a surveyor and other folks who'd expedite the process as fast as possible, and the DRB will usually take my recommendations if there's nothing in particular to catch their attention. So I didn't even bother going up to meet Nikki and his wife Ida. I was buried in paperwork, and Dale's recommendation was good enough for me. However, because Dale was 3rd or 4th generation on that farm and knows everyone in the area, there was more than a little interest in what was happening up at his old place, which I guarantee will still be called Bedard's 1,000 or so years from now. So, without anyone actually visiting there in person, or maybe due to folks just driving by, word, or some version of word, started to spread, and I started to hear about it. First, I got a call from Charlie Nelson, chair of our select board, saying, "Did you hear there's a factory going up at the Bedards?" Jill Peterson from the Conservation and Wildlife Committee was next, saying that they were breeding free-range reindeer up at Bedard's with no fencing or enclosures, and what would happen if they got out in the wild because wouldn't reindeer be considered an invasive species? Then the publisher of our town paper wrote an editorial about the project suggesting, with barely suppressed conspiracy-laden hysteria, that there was far more to this factory than met the eye, and what would happen when we learned too late that a cell of major international terrorists had established a training camp and munitions factory in our own backyard. I figured before the townspeople broke out the torches and the pitchforks, I'd better get up there and pay the Clausens a little visit. I caught a ride with Steve Landry, the surveyor for the project. He'd been up there a couple of times already, and I thought he could give me a better idea of what was going on. "So Steve," I said as I shut the door of his truck, "what do you think? Is this thing gonna fly?" "Fly? What do you mean fly?" Steve sounded nervous, like I'd accused him of something. "Well, you know," I said, the Clausen project, are they gonna have any problems?" "Problems? Like what?" "Well, I don't know, Steve. You're the surveyor. Whatever you usually survey for." Steve's answer kind of petered out. I turned to him, and my eyes bugged a little. "Gee, Steve, you look like crap." He really did. For a guy who mostly works in the field, he's usually pretty clean and tidy. More so than me with my office job. But right now, he was glassy-eyed, unshaven, and covered in dirt, like he'd had a romantic encounter with a wild boar. "Are you okay, Steve?" Yeah, well, I was up there last night and? Steve paused and let out a weary sigh. "Would you reach in the glove box and grab me the Advil?" I opened the little door in front of me, and one of those enormous Advil bottles from Costco fell out on my feet. It was the size of a jumbo jar of peanut butter. I picked it up and looked at him again. "How many?" Steve moaned. "I lost count." "What? Lost count of what?" Steve looked at me and the mega bottle in my hands. Oh, yeah, that. Give me 6. No, make it 10. 10? 10 Advil? But, wait, what did you think I was asking? Jesus. Steve, are you hungover? They told me I'd be okay. Who? You'll have to meet him for yourself. Meet who? Steve held out his hand for the Advil, swallowed them dry, and didn't say another word. When we got to the foot of the Clausens' long driveway, we passed under a giant wrought iron archway, a scrolled, fancy-looking thing in a style that I could only call Victorian Ranch. It was strung with twinkling Christmas lights and other holiday-style decorations. I read the ornate calligraphy-type lettering high above our heads. North Pole South? Yeah, said Steve. They really miss it. Who? I asked. Them, said Steve, nodding to indicate a group of about 5 little kids standing in the middle of the road and waving at us. They were all dressed in, well, I'd never seen this before, but I guess you would call them knickers. Woolly pants in various shades of brown and green, all buckled just below the knee. And they all had on dark socks, work boots, plaid shirts, bright red suspenders, and red caps which pointed a little at the top, kind of like a droopy cherry meringue. Steve stopped the truck, and the kids sauntered over and climbed in the bed, except for one who got in the truck next to me.
Steve-O!
He said, in a gravelly, unkid-like voice.
Good to see you back. Who's this?
I looked at him, at his buddies in the back of the pickup truck. They were definitely not kids. They were short, sure, and cheerful, yeah, youthful looking, but also somehow ancient. And something about them, I don't know what it was exactly. Maybe it was the pointy ears or the cat-like eyes, the odd whistling language they were speaking to each other, but something said certifiably not human. This is Mike Downey, said Steve. He's the town planner. Gonna help you guys get the workshop running. Mike, this is, Well, I call him Gonzo. I can't pronounce his real name. Why Gonzo? You try drinking with him all night, then you tell me. Hi, Gonzo.
Nice to meet you, Mikey.
You all work for the Clausens?
Oh, yeah, we do, don't we, guys?
All his fellow knicker wearers nodded enthusiastically. So, how you fellas settling in?
Oh, Mikey, it's a good thing you're here. There's a little problems right now, and we gotta get the shop set up. It's getting kinda late. The clock is ticking, 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 and the kids, they don't wait.
What kids, Gonzo?
Oh, all of them that's believing.
Steve pulled the truck up into the yard, and it became pretty clear that there was indeed a little problems, and that I was only a short ways off from my whole townsfolk with pitchforks prediction. The place was full of cars and people, and nobody looked happy. I jumped out of the truck, headed towards the house, and waded into the crowd clustered around the front porch. Suddenly, people started parting, Red Sea-like, in advance of me. I couldn't figure out what had made me Moses until I looked down and saw Gonzo and his pals elbowing knees and stepping on toes. I stopped at the base of the steps and found myself gazing up at a very familiar-looking face. The face of an older, bearded gentleman who I assumed must be Nicky. Next to him stood a classically grandmotherly woman bearing a classically steaming platter of chocolate chip cookies. She could only be Ida. Gonzo jumped up on the porch, grabbed a cookie, and said,
Steve-O's back! And this is Mikey, he's helping.
I held out my hand. Mike Downey, Mr. Clausen, Mrs. Clausen. I'm the town planner. Sorry I haven't been by before. Well, Mike, looks like you got here just in time. Ida's cookies are fresh out of the oven. Ida offered me a cookie and then turned to the crowd and said, have a seat in the yard, everyone. Milk and cookies for everybody. The group of heads turned as one to see that what was just moments ago an empty yard had been transformed into a little outdoor cafe with chairs and tables sporting red and green checked tablecloths. Ida called out, sit everyone, please. And the stunned townspeople looked sideways at each other and then moved slowly into the yard and sat. A dozen or so Gonzo lookalikes came out of the house with trays of milk-filled mason jars and antique china dessert plates piled high with cookies. There was a moment or two of peaceful munching, but then Charlie Nelson, our factory-fearing select board chair, sat up straight and said, wait, does this mean you folks want to put in a restaurant up here as well? No, not at all, soothed Nicky, but Charlie wasn't having it. Those waiters of yours look pretty well trained. There was a chorus of nodding and mm-hmming, though not much actually speech. The cookies, after all, were really good. No, repeated Nicky. These gentlemen have been working for us for quite some time in many different capacities, and they're very gifted at anything they put their hands to. Well, that just opens up a whole new set of questions, countered Charlie. For one thing, how many of these guys you got working up here? Charlie looked at Gonzo, who proudly declared,
We's tree hunters.
what, you're tree hunters?
Nah.
Said Gonzo, counting on his fingers.
100s, 200s, 300s.
300? 300 workers? The requisite shocked murmur rippled through the crowd. Charlie sputtered on, and you're calling this a home-based business, Mr. Clausen? With an HBB, you can't have more than what, Mike? Sadly, I knew where he was headed. 2, Charlie. Yeah, you can't have more than 2 non-members of the immediate family engaged in this home occupation at one time. Actually, I said, sometimes it's 5. Charlie scoffed. 2, 5, what the hell difference does it make? You're still counting on one hand, not 300. That's a whole freaking village. And then the floodgates opened, with the rest of the crowd starting in. Where are they going to live? It's going to be condos up here, I knew it. That little guy sounds foreign. Are they illegal immigrants? This won't create local jobs. What about increased traffic on the road? There's going to be delivery trucks, right? What about water? What about sewage? What about noise? Will there be lights? Will there be smoke? That North Pole South sign is too damn big and too damn bright. On and on and on it went. Until I thought I'd better intercede. Hey, folks, please, settle down. Settle down. Settle down they would not. Finally, Ida stepped in. Enough! Too much sugar! No more cookies for you! And with that, all their cookies disappeared. Ida, said Nicky, his voice stern with disapproval. Nicky, said Ida, pointing at the now silent crowd, they were being very naughty. No, said Nicky, they're just concerned. This farm is an important part of the town. This town is their home. What if we changed it as much as ours was changed? Ida suddenly looked very sad. Oh, all right. The cookies rematerialized. Whoa, said Charlie, what'd they put in my milk? I hadn't had any milk, but my brain started to feel a little melty anyway. I mean, none of this was very subtle. The clues were all there. The workshop, the sign, Gonzo and his crew, the reindeer. The fact that Nicky was a dead ringer for a myth. A myth. Not to mention, I read a jokey sort of article once on the physics of the whole thing. 93 million homes in 31 hours, works out to 822.6 visits per second with a sleigh moving at 3,000 times the speed of sound, blah, blah, blah. It couldn't be him. I mean, it's just not possible. It's not. And yet, I turned to Nicky. Mr. Clausen, are you? Nicky nodded and looked around for Steve, who was sitting on the porch sharing a flask with Gonzo. Steve's expression was dead serious. You better believe it, buddy. But how? Gonzo laughed.
It's a magic, Mikey. That's all. Just a magic.
And this is North Pole South because... I paused. North Pole. Images flashed through my mind. Melting ice, starving, drowning polar bears. Melting ice. A mental coin dropped, and I put it all together. Holy cow. Gonzo agreed.
Yeah, Mikey. He's a big, big holy cow.
Now I was confused. Now wait a sec. If you guys have that much magic, how come you can't just fix things? Put it back the way it was. Nicky suddenly looked very, very old. I'm Santa Claus, Mike. I'm not God. Ida added, we all have our gifts, but we can only do what we can do. And we do it the best we can. But fixing things? It's out of our hands. It'll take other people with other talents to do that. Wow. Well, I can only hope they bring as much devotion and love to their work as you folks do to yours. Ida and Nicky smiled. Their eyes twinkled. It was a moment to behold. But, I went on, I assume this magic of yours will at least take care of all the concerns these people have expressed? Mike, said Nicky proudly, I'm not God, but I am Santa Claus. I turned to face the crowd. You folks hear that? Silence. That was not a rhetorical question. Did you people hear that? There was a smattering of nods from the crowd. No, I don't think you did. Not really. So listen up. These folks, those reindeer, they are the real deal. And they're here because they can't live at the North Pole anymore. Why? Because it's turning into the North Puddle. And of all the cool, amazing, storybook places in the world they could have gone, New Zealand, Nepal, Costa Rica.
Me? I want to go to Disneyland.
Right! Thanks, Gonzo. Disneyland, where they'd probably blend right in. Of all those places, they chose to come here, to Vermont, to our community. And just this moment, watching you all this afternoon, I have no idea why. But I guess that it's because they're pretty good at looking into people's hearts. And they know that behind the questions, behind the anger, and the niggling details, and the conspiracy theories, and the
fear.
Yeah, Gonzo, the fear. Behind all that, and hang on, Gonzo, I think I know this one. Behind all that is love. A fierce, committed love to this place, for the land, for the community. And more than that, even, they know that this is a place where their kind of magic, a magic of generosity and compassion and achieving the impossible, can live and thrive. There was a long pause. And then, as one, they all said, "Oh." Charlie stood up and shook Nikki's hand. "Sorry, Santa, I didn't realize." The others chimed right in. "So glad to have you. You need anything to help you get set up? Can I have the recipe for those cookies?" And with that, Santa Claus had more than come to town. He'd come home.
Right? Isn't that the best story ever? Here's a song that I wrote actually right in this room. Every night when the sun goes down, say a blessing upon this town. Whether I see the dawn or no, life has always been touch and go. Life isn't easy in these old hills. Work and you work and you work more still than you take a little pleasure in the simple things. Hard work and hope can be a pair of wings in these green mountains, where something's always falling. Rain or the snow or the leaves of gold, as if the ground was calling. Nothing ever stays the same. Change will always call your name. We don't give up when the going gets dark. Might not be the flame, but you can be a spark. There's just no saying what a spark might write. When we stand together, we can light up the night. These green mountains, where something's always falling. Rain or the snow or the leaves of gold, as if the ground was calling. Nothing ever stays the same. Change will always call your name. There's hope in every little thing we do, and our faith in each other's always seen us through. But the greatest of all is that love lives on, the only rock that we can build upon. These green mountains, where something's always falling. Rain or the snow or the leaves of gold, as if the ground was calling. Nothing ever stays the same. change will always call your name. Change will always call your name.
So we're about to finish up. But before we do, we want to thank a few folks for making this evening possible. Thanks to Susanna Batchley and Tom McKenzie for jumping in with their musical magic. Thank you to Catherine Cerulli for a beautiful poster.
Thanks to the warm and welcoming OMH community and a beautiful host of volunteers who operate quietly and efficiently behind the scenes, much like Santa's elves, so we can all be here this evening sharing this event. And we have a particularly enthusiastic shout out to Wendy Soliday for making our yummy, yummy dinner.
Thank you to the trustee Old Meeting House Board of Trustees for preparing the space for us, setting up the stage, starting the fires that warm us, body and soul, and really making us feel so at home.
Thanks to the Old Meeting House Arts Ministries Committee for bringing arts events to this space, and a special thank you to Catherine Harris, Lori Heinrichsen, Marcia Clark, and Will Forrest.
And of course, thanks to you for being here tonight and sharing this special event with us. We hope to see you again back here next year.
We always close with May Sarton's 1937 New Year greeting as a way to approach the next 12 months with integrity and hope. Active hope, as Joanna Macy would say, an honest assessment of the path ahead, and a clear-eyed belief in our capacity to face challenges with courage, devotion, determination, and firmly rooted resilience.
Much as in 1937 or 2022, we never know what our lives will bring or what resources we'll need to draw upon to get through tough times.
But we do know that we are, at our best, beings capable of unconditional love and infinite kindness, and we will bring our whole selves to the world in all ways, however we are called to serve.
The earth feels old tonight. And we who live and stand on the cold rim face a new year.
It is raining everywhere, as if the rain were mercy, as if the rain were peace, peace falling on our hair.
Open your hearts tonight. Let them burn. Let them light a way in the dark.
Let them one by one affirm there is hope for a staff. I say it will flower in our hands. We shall go garlanded.
There is the fine, fresh stuff of faith for a coat. We shall go warm.
We shall go on by the light of our hearts. We shall burn mightily in the new year. We shall go on together. Oh, you who stand alone on the rim of the earth and are cold, I salute you here.
No bees, pacem, pacem. Dona nobis pacem. Dona nobis pacem, pacem.
Good night, everyone.